Here's a quick little tutorial reminding you how to use ReCycle. I've already started up ReCycle. When you start it, it will open up with this open screen asking you to find a loop that you want to work with. On the lab computers at Harbor College, you'll find a big folder on the Macintosh hard drive. You'll scroll down and it will say something like loops, MIDI, and REX files or something like that. This is my home computer, so the loops are in a different spot. And if you're working from home, obviously, hopefully, anyway, you know where you keep your loops. So I'm going to work with a drum loop here. Okay. So once you find the loop you want, you click open, and it opens in the ReCycle window, and you can see the audio waveform mapped out. Okay, first thing we need to do is figure out a couple of things. How much of this we're going to use? Are we going to use the whole thing? And if so, how long is it? So let's just listen and count along. Okay, were you able to figure out how many measures it is? Sounds like 2 bars to me, especially when you look at this indication up here. It's a fast tempo. I'm going to do something here. Let's say for this project I wanted a 1 measure drum loop for some reason or other. You could also do what I'm about to show you here if you've recorded your own REX file or your own loop, and maybe it's a little over, you know, a measure or 2 measures and 2 beats or something like that, and you want to cut out part of it. You can use these left and right markers to set up a new loop points. I'm going to show you how that works, and I'm going to try to shorten this 2-bar phrase into a 1-bar phrase. Just keep moving the markers until it sounds right, and it sounds like I've got a 1-bar phrase set up now. Okay, if you want to, you can get rid of everything else by cropping the loop. What this is going to do, I went to process and crop loop. I haven't clicked it yet, but when I do, it will erase everything that's outside of the left and right markers. Okay, so I've got my 1 bar. I'm going to enter that in here. Notice the original tempo is currently reading 0 beats per minute. It's because ReCycle hasn't been able to process this loop yet to figure out what the tempo is. And it needs some information from me. It needs to know how many bars plus beats if necessary. It needs to know the time signature. This is a 4/4 loop, and it's I've now shortened it to 1 bar. So I'm going to type that in, and I'll click this preview toggle just sort of to lock in that new tempo. Okay, so now the original tempo is showing 130 and some beats per minute. Alright, so I'm going to let it play, and while it plays I'm going to adjust the sensitivity slider, and you'll see slice points appearing in the audio waveform. What those slice points are, those are each slice is going to be an individual sample mapped to MIDI notes, and the Dr. Rex player will either trigger those samples more quickly or more slowly depending on what happens to your reason tempo. So it makes it a true variable speed or variable tempo REX file, and when you speed up or slow down the reason song, you won't be changing the pitch of these drums. Alright, so I think that looks like a good amount of loops. I'm going to go up here. Well, before I save it, there are other controls here in ReCycle, and you can manipulate the sound. You can filter it, you can change the attack and things like that. But we're just going to keep it simple. I'm going to go File, Save, and I'm going to give this loop a new name. Let's just call it 130 DRM, and then I'll do _1 bar, just so I know what this is later on. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to save it to a desktop. I don't recommend that you do that. I recommend that you have either put this in a project folder if you're working on a specific song, or save it to your own loops folder so that you can find this later if you want to use it in another project. Alright, so we've saved it. I'm going to hide ReCycle, and here's my loop now out here on the desktop. Earlier I started a reason file and I added a subtractor. I'm going to create a Dr. Rex player in there, and I'm going to load our new 1 bar loop. There it is. Playing back slower, right? Do you know why? Look at the tempo of my sequence. It's at 120. The loop was originally at 130, but it still sounds pretty good. Okay, I'm going to click on that Dr. Rex track. I've got my left and right markers set for 16 bars, and I'm going to click to track. It's ready to go. That's it.